Hey there, Bible nerds! Welcome to Chapters and Chuckles by Kaye, where we dive into the Bible chapter by chapter. This is episode 5, and today we're journeying through Genesis chapters 21 through 25, a section packed with miracle baby, family feuds, and a near sacrifice, epic negotiations, romance at the end, and sibling rivalry again, of course. There's always that. So, buckle up. Then let's dive in chapter by chapter. So, let's talk about Genesis 21. The baby and the LOL. Lots of laughters. In Genesis 21, Sarah finally has her miracle baby. Remember how she laughed when God promised she'd have a child in old age? Well, the joke's on her because it happens. Sarah, at 90 years young, gives birth to Isaac while Abraham is 100. They named the baby boy Isaac, which literally means he laughs, capturing the joy and shock of the moment. As Sarah herself exclaims, God has brought laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh with me. So indeed, imagine the nursing home or the tent full of laughter at the sight of new mom Sarah cradling baby Isaac. But the laughs don't last long before the family drama kicks in. Because there's always drama. That's why I love Genesis. So fast forward to toddler Isaac's weaning party. A big feast thrown by proud Papa Abraham. Sarah catches sight of teenage Ishmael, Abraham's son, with Hagar playing around. Where we are not told exactly what Ishmael was doing. It was not mentioned in the Bible, but maybe he was teasing or roughhousing. I don't know. But, Mama Bear Sarah is not having it. So in a flash of jealousy and protective instinct, Sarah tells Abraham to banish Hagar and Ishmael. Out with that slave woman and her son. My Isaac is the heir, not him. That's the gist of, her demand. Abraham is heartbroken. Ishmael is his son, after all, and it's actually his first son. God steps in and gently tells Abraham to listen to Sarah in this case, but assures him that Ishmael will also become a great nation, a father to many nations as well. So early next morning, a saddened Abraham gives Hagar bread and water and sends her and Ishmael off into the desert. It's a tough goodbye. Like, talk about a deserted feeling. No pun intended. Soon the water, runs out and Hagar fears the worst for her boy. In an incredible, poignant scene, or sad, or how else would you explain that? A sad scene. She places Ishmael under a bush and sits at a distance, sobbing, because she cannot look on the death of the child. But just when hope seems lost, God hears the boy's cries. An angel calls from heaven, what troubles you, Hagar? Don't be afraid. God opens her eyes to a well of water, miraculously nearby. So, plot twist, there was an oasis all along, just right there. Hagar refills her water thing, forgot what it was called, and then saves Ishmael, and they survive. We learn that Ishmael grows up in the wilderness as an expert archer. And Hagar even finds him an Egyptian wife. Not too shabby for a kid almost left for dead, through it all. But God was with Ishmael, just as he promised. And this just so a little we're gonna sidetrack for a little bit. So this just shows how much God cares for the fatherless and for the, I guess let's just use the word single moms. And I just want to say that. Anyways, so if you're a single mom and you think you need to find somebody to be a father figure for your child, you don't necessarily need to just to look good for other people's eyes, or just if you think that a child needs a father figure. That's not always the case. We have God. Sometimes God is just the father that our child needs, and God will protect you and provide for you when you're kids, even if you're doing everything on your own, and yeah. So I just want to say that because I'm in the same situation, and I don't feel the need to find someone to fill the void, because there is no void. And I don't need to find someone to complete my family, because my family is already complete, just me and my daughter. So yeah. So anyways, I digress. So as if that weren't enough, that for one chapter, Genesis 21 wraps up with Abraham making a peace treaty. Local king Abimelech, if you remember him from the last episode, notices that Abraham's God-given success and says, essentially, let's be friends. They swear an oath of friendship at Beersheba. There's a minor squabble about a stolen well. Abraham complains that Abimelech's servants seized his well. So Abimelech plays innocent, like, who, me? Like, I don't know, I have no idea, or something like that. And Abraham solves it in a rather charming way, actually. He gives Abimelech 7 lambs as a witness that the well is truly Abraham's. Abimelech is like, what's with these 7 lambs? And Abraham replies, they're proof I dug this well, so please don't steal it again, okay? Like, so they named the place Beersheba, which means well of 7, or well of the oath, and the deal is done. Abraham plants a tamarisk tree there and calls on the Lord, the everlasting God. Finally, some place and quiet in the Philistine country for now. Anyways, so on to our fun fact corner. So, the name Isaac comes from the Hebrew word for laughter. Like, how very fitting is that? Like, Sarah and Abraham laughed, first in disbelief and then in joy at God's promise. And now every time they call Isaac's name, it's a reminder of the joyful laughter brought into their lives. Talk about LOL, Lord of laughter indeed. So Genesis 21 shows God's faithfulness to his promise. Isaac's birth teaches that no matter how outrageous God's promise may sound, no matter how delulu it sounds, God keeps his word. This chapter also has a deeper lesson about God's care for the outcast. Even as the covenant line continues through Isaac, God hears Hagar and Ishmael's cries. He provides for them, providing his compassion extends beyond one family. And for us, it's a reminder that God can bring laughter out of impossible situations, and that no one is outside the reach of his care, even if you are a single mother like Hagar. All right, so Genesis 22, the ultimate test, aka hold that knife, and you'll see what I mean. So Genesis 22 hits us with one of the Bible's most dramatic episodes. God tests Abraham in a heart-wrenching way. It starts quietly, After these things, God tested Abraham. Then, out of the blue, God calls, Abraham. And Abraham answers, Here I am. God then drops the bombshell. Take your son, your only son, Isaac, whom you love, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall show you. Did we just hear that right? Yep, we did. Sacrifice his son that they waited so long to have. It's the ultimate test of trust. Incredibly faithful, very faithful, Abraham obeys without argument. Early the next morning, he saddles his donkey, splits some wood, and sets off with Isaac and 2 servants toward the distant land of Moriah. People who've read this for the first time as a reader, like me, the first time I read it, I was like basically screaming, like, no, like what? Like, what? Anyways, so after a 3-day journey, Abraham spots the mountain. He tells the servants, Stay here. The boy and I will go over there. We will worship and then come back. Like, interesting. He said, we will come back. Hint of faith that somehow both will return, perhaps. Father and son trudge up the mountain alone. Isaac, carrying the wood on his back, notices something odd, like cue the painfully awkward conversation on the hike. Like Isaac probably about Isaac's age is not given, but many thinks he's a strong youth here, like teens, And he says, Father? And Abraham says, Yes, my son. And Isaac, glancing around, and the fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? So, oh boy, like, how do you answer that? Like, Abraham manages to say, God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Then they walk on together. Isaac probably still puzzled. I imagine Abraham's heart is like pounding louder than a drum solo. Like, I don't know. So they reach the top of the mountain. Abraham builds an altar, arranges the wood, and with a heavy heart, he binds Isaac and lays him on the altar. At this point, like, first time reading it, I was like on the edge of my seat, and Isaac might be too, quite literally, probably. Then Abraham raises the knife. The suspense is at its peak. While will he really do it? And suddenly, Abraham, an angel of the Lord calls from heaven at the very last second. He says, do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. The angel says, for now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me. Abraham's relief must have been like immeasurable, as would I. Like, not to mention Isaac's is probably like literally scared to death. In that exact moment, Abraham looks up and sees a ram caught by its horns in a thicket. A perfect substitute. He frees Isaac, and they sacrifice the ram instead. Abraham names that place Yahweh Yireh, meaning the Lord will provide. Because did God ever provide at the right time? Like, yes, exactly at the right time. Like, to this day, people say, on the mount of the Lord it shall be provided. Angel voice returns with a message from God, reaffirming the covenant with extra oomph, because Abraham didn't hold back even his beloved son. God swears to him or to bless him like never before. I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven and as the sand of the seashore, and by your offspring shall all nation of the earth gain blessing for themselves. That's a direct continuation of God's promises. Now, sealed by Abraham's astounding act of obedience. The test ends with father and son coming back down the mountain together, very much alive and probably in need of a hug and a good long sit down. Isaac probably got PTSD. I don't know. Imagine the conversation like on the way home, like, so Dad, about that, providing a lamb thing.
Mommy, wanna see how many oranges in there?
What? You ate a lot of oranges? Okay. Good job. That's enough now, okay? Yeah? Okay. Can you close the door, please?
Didn't make close all the way.
Sure. Thank you.
So I don't come in.
Or just like that. Just close it, but not all the way. Just like that. Thank you. So, where was I? So, the chapter closes with a little postscript from Abraham's relatives back in Mesopotamia, including news that his brother Nahor has a new granddaughter named Rebecca. So just keep that name in mind. So fun fact, according to Jewish tradition, the mountain in the land of Moriah, where Abraham almost sacrificed Isaac, is believed to be the very same hill in Jerusalem where Solomon later built the temple. So in other words, the Temple Mount. So how poetic is that? Like the spot that nearly saw the sacrifice of Abraham's beloved son became the site where countless sacrifices were offered to God. And in Christian belief, it's not far from Golgotha, where God did not spare his own son. Did I say that right? Yeah, where God did not spare his own son. Also, here's a cool detail. This is the first time the word love appears in the Bible. Take your son, your only son, whom you love. Yeah, so take your son, your only son, whom you love. And it's about a father and son, foreshadowing, anyone. Foreshadowing anyone? Get it? So the story is, or the story of the binding of Isaac is profound. It teaches about trust and obedience at a whole new level. Abraham trusted God even when the command seemed to contradict the promise. Like in the end, God provides the substitute, showing he never intended child sacrifice, but was testing Abraham's heart. For believers, this story often foreshadows God's own sacrifice, just as Abraham did not withhold his only son. God did not withhold Jesus. The chapter challenges us what to do, or what do we hold most dear, and what are we to do? Like, would we trust God with it? Thankfully, Genesis 22 assures us that God is both faithful and merciful. He provided a ram then, and he provides for us in our time of need. Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide, is a name to remember when we're on our own daunting mountains. So, Genesis 23, real estate and reverence, buying a burial plot. So this episode shifts gears to a somber event. Sarah dies at 127 years old. the end of an era for Abraham. Abraham is heartbroken. He weeps for her then. As was custom, he sets out to arrange her burial. What follows is perhaps the Bible's first real estate transaction, and let me tell you, it's quite a haggling spectacle, but with a polite ancient Near Eastern twist. So Abraham, a foreigner in the land of Canaan, approaches the local Hittites of Hebron, saying, "I am a stranger among you. Please sell me a piece of land so I can bury my wife." So the Hittites regard Abraham as an honored prince, actually, and they respond with grand courtesy, saying, "Oh, sir, take any of our tombs. None of us will refuse you." Like, sounds generous, but watch the the negotiation now. Abraham bows respectfully and specifically asks to buy the cave of Machpelah, owned by a certain Ephron, son of Zorah, at full price. He wants to buy it at full price. Ephron is sitting right there at the city gate, where business happens, and he jumps in. "Of course, my lord, I'll give you the field and the cave. In front of everyone, I give it to you. Bury your dead." You might think, like, wow, free cave. But Middle Eastern bargaining can be sneaky. Abraham, no fool knows free isn't really free. He insists, "Please, let me pay you the price." Ephron finally cuffs up the, real price tag, casually a piece of land worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Go ahead, bury your dead. Hold on, like 400 shekels. That's a huge sum back then. To compare, elsewhere in the Bible, 50 shekels bought a lot of land. So 400 is sky high. Ephron's definitely upselling here while pretending it's nothing. So Abraham doesn't even haggle. He weighs out the 400 shekels of silver on the spot, like, cha-ching, sell close. So Abraham becomes the proud and probably somewhat poor owner of the field of Machpelah with its caves. Or its cave. I think it's just one cave over there. He buries beloved Sarah in that cave, which lay before Mamre, also known as Hebron. This little detail is significant. This cave is the first piece of the promised land that Abraham actually owns. It's a gravesite, a bittersweet token of both loss and trust in God's promise that one day his descendants will own all the land. Abraham chose to secure Sarah's resting place in the land of Canaan, staking a claim, a figurative stake, staking a claim in the very soil God promised, even though he himself still lived there as a nomad. So, fun fact corner. Don't let the polite language fool you. Abraham knew he was being overcharged for the cave. Scholars and, rabbis note that 400 shekel was an exorbitant price. That was the word that was used. Exorbitant price. Ephron acted all buddy-buddy, like, "Oh, what's a 400 silver pieces between friends?" Essentially charging Abraham the foreigner price. But Abraham paid it without a fuzz. Why? Perhaps to avoid future disputes. He wanted clear title to the only land he had owned in Canaan. And fun fact, the cave of Machpelah is traditionally held to be the burial place of not just Sarah, but eventually Abraham himself, and then Isaac, Rebecca, Jacob, and Leah. It's now called the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron, which is weird because, you know, the wives were also buried there. Anyways, some fun facts there. So this chapter might read like an ordinary land purchase, but it carries symbolic weight. Abraham conducts himself with integrity and respect, even in grief and even dealing with a sly salesman. He insists on paying, ensuring that the promised land is not taken by force or favor, but by right. It's a testament to Abraham's faith in God's promise. But he buries Sarah in Canaan because he believes his descendants will live there permanently. On a personal level, Abraham, his mourning and effort to honor Sarah with a proper burial highlights the importance of love and respect in loss. It reminds us to hold on to God's promises even when we've lost something dear. Sometimes investing in the future, even if it's just a burial plot, is an act of faith. So that's the end of that chapter. Now let's talk about Genesis 24. Love at the well, a bride for Isaac. Let me just do a quick hydration break. Ooh. Alright, so get ready for a long, detailed love story. Genesis 24 is one of the lengthiest chapters in Genesis, and it reads like an epic romance mission. The scene, Abraham is now old and wants a good wife for Isaac, who's about 40 by now. But he is adamant that Isaac should not marry a local Canaanite girl. So Abraham calls in his senior servant, most likely Eliezer, though he was not really named here. But anyways, so he makes him swear a solemn oath. Go back to my homeland and find a wife from my own family for Isaac. The servant even has to put his hand under Abraham's thigh during the oath. It's an ancient custom that basically means swear on it, seriously. The servant asks, what if the woman won't come back with me? Should I take Isaac there? Abraham says no, says promise you won't take Isaac out of Canaan. If the woman refuses to come, you're released from the oath, but God will send his angels to guide you. So, mission accepted. Soon we see this, trusty servant taking 10 camels loaded with gifts and traveling 500 plus miles to Aram Naharaim, which is, Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor, Abraham's brother's town. It's a long journey, but the real test comes upon arrival. The servant reaches the town well in the evening, a prime time when women come to draw water. He was parched and probably nervous. The servant prays, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please make my journey successfully. I'm here by the spring. Let the young woman who not only gives me a drink when I ask, but also volunteers to water my camels, let her be the one for Isaac. Bold, specific prayer is essentially setting up a very specific sign. The ideal wife should be extra kind and industrious, because watering camels is no joke. So, side note, I don't know how most people pray, but when I pray, I tend to be very, very specific. So don't be afraid to be specific when you are praying. Don't just say, if you're praying for a job, a good job, don't just say a good job. Say, say the specific kind of position you want, what kind of salary you want, annually, and the people that you'll be working with, like be very specific when you are praying. Anyways, going back, I digressed. Before he even finishes praying, along comes Rebecca. Remember that name? The gorgeous granddaughter of Abraham's brother Nahor. Though the servant doesn't know this, he doesn't know her identity yet. The Bible describes her as a very fair and a virgin. She goes down to the spring, fills her jar, and as she comes up, the servant runs to meet her. He politely asks, "Please, may I sip a little water from your jar?" Rebecca smiles and says, "Drink, my lord," and quickly lets him drink from her jar. Then, here comes, she adds, "I will draw water for your camels also until they have finished drinking." Like, score! That's exactly the sign he prayed for. Exactly to the T. Rebecca eagerly empties her jar into the trough and runs back and forth to the well, carrying water for all 10 camels. The servant watches in astonished silence, probably thinking, did that really just happen? Like, she's the one. Like, I just literally prayed for it and it happened. It was answered right away. And, can we take a moment to appreciate Rebecca's superhero effort here? Like, 10 thirsty camels can drink a ton of water, literally. Camels can drink about 20-30 gallons each after a long trip. So Rebecca might have drawn 200 plus gallons of water for these camels. It was like doing CrossFit with jugs of water for no reason. Like, no wonder the servant is wowed by her dedication and kindness. So once the camels are satisfied and, no camel spits were exchanged, we hope, because camels do spit. They're so rude. No, that's just their thing. So the servant rewards Rebecca with a gold nose ring and 2 hefty gold bracelets. Yeah, nose rings were a thing. Even back then. Ancient bling, practical and impressive. Then he asks, "Whose daughter are you? And is there room at your father's house for us to spend the night?" Rebecca reveals her parentage. She's the daughter of Bethuel, son of Nahor, aka she's Abraham's great niece, a perfect match for Isaac's kin requirements. She adds, "We have plenty of straw and fodder." I don't know if that's how you say that. And yes, room for you to stay. Hospitality. At this news, the servant literally bows and worships the Lord on the spot, like praising God for steadfast love and faithfulness in leading him straight to Abraham's own relatives. Very successful mission. Well, not yet, because he hasn't asked her yet, but everything's going good so far. Rebecca, meanwhile, runs home to tell her family about this stranger and the jewelry gifts. Her brother Laban sees the gold. Ever notice how Laban always notices the wealth? Well, if you don't know him yet, then yeah, Laban is something. And rushes out to invite the servant in. "Come, blessed of the Lord. I prepared the house and a spot for your camels." Laban's laying on the charm and maybe mentally calculating the gold's carats. They all sit down for a meal, but the servant refuses to eat until he shares his mission. So what follows is a fascinating, almost word-for-word replay of the whole story from the servant's perspective. Abraham's instruction, the oath, the prayer, Rebecca's timely arrival, and kindness. The servant basically says, "So that's why I'm here. If you intend to show steadfast love and allow Rebecca to be Isaac's wife, tell me now. If not, I need to know so I can figure out plan B." Laban and Bethuel answer, "This is clearly from the Lord. Who are we to object? Rebekah is yours for Isaac. Take her and go, and the Lord has spoken." They're surprisingly agreeable, perhaps because it obviously seems divinely orchestrated. And, did we mention the gold? That's the very first thing that they saw. So, hearing this, the servant bows to the ground again, thanking God. He then breaks out even more treasures like silver, gold, garments, giving them to Rebekah, and also gives to her brother and mother. It's like an engagement extravaganza. They celebrate with food and drink and spend the night. By morning, the servant is eager to head back to Isaac with the bride-to-be. Rebekah's family, suddenly feeling the goodbye, say, "Okay, let the girl stay with us 10 days or so. Then she can go." But the servant, knowing the mission is urgent, pleads, "Please don't delay me. The Lord's prospered my journey. I gotta return to my master." So they decide to ask Rebekah, novel idea, involve the woman in her own marriage decision. As back then they didn't really care about the women's opinion. So they call her. "Will you go with this man now?" Without hesitation, Rebekah says, "I will go." What a brave young woman, willing to leave home immediately to marry a man she's never met because she believes this is God's plan. And just like that, they send off Rebekah with her childhood nurse and maids. As she departs, her family blesses her with a beautiful farewell. "May you, our sister, become thousands of myriads. May your offspring possess the gates of their foes." So translation, may you have zillions of kids and grandkids, and may they be victorious. A wedding toast of the ancient world. Now picture the scene back in Canaan. It's early evening. Isaac is out in the field meditating or maybe pacing, wondering how, the wife hunt is going. He looks up and sees camels approaching. Rebekah, riding on a camel, sees a man in the field and asks the servant, "Who is that man coming to meet us?" The servant grins. "That's my master," i.e. the groom. So Rebekah quickly veils herself. Gotta make a proper first impression as a bride. In an instant, Isaac and Rebekah meet. The servant gives Isaac the full debrief of the miraculous way God led him to Rebekah. And then, in one of the most tender verses in Genesis, Isaac brought her into his mother Sarah's tent. He took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her. So Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Isaac finally has love in his life again, filling the void left by Sarah's passing. Cue the sunset. It's a happily ever after beginning for Isaac and Rebekah. So, fun fact, theirs is one of the few biblical marriages that genuinely seems loving from the start, and we see that Isaac loved Rebekah. Very sweet. So here's now our actual fun fact corner. Rebekah watering the camel's feet is very legendary, as I have, explained earlier. But let me just talk about it again because I really that was very amazing. So those 10 camels they drank at least 200 gallons of water in total. So that could have taken hours of hard work, and Rebekah did it willingly for a stranger. No questions asked. Talk about a servant's heart. In modern terms, imagine offering to fill up someone's 10 trucks with fuel on your own dime. That's the level of hospitality we're dealing with. No wonder the servant knew this woman was a gem. Also, notice how Rebekah had a choice. Her family asked if she would go. Because again, as I've said earlier, back then, you can marry off your daughter, whatever woman, your servant, and they don't have a say at all. So, but Rebecca had a choice. So this strong, faith-filled woman said yes to a completely new adventure. She's a great example of faith and courage in action. So Genesis 24 is often seen as a beautiful illustration of divine guidance and what to seek in relationships. Abraham trusted God to guide the process, and the servant prayed specifically, and trusted God's providence. The result was a match made in heaven, literally. Qualities like kindness, hospitality, faith, and courage shine through Rebecca. Qualities still very valuable today, and qualities that that you should be looking for. For those looking for guidance in marriage or any big decision, this story encourages prayer, faith, and watching for God's subtle confirmations. It's also a story about legacy. Isaac finding love and comfort after a loss ensures the promise to Abraham will continue into the next generation. In a way, this chapter reminds us that God cares about the little details, like drawing water for camels, when orchestrating his big plan. And when God writes the love story, you can bet it's going to be a good one. And that's it for Genesis 24. Now let's talk about Genesis chapter 25. Closing a chapter and opening a can of soup. Jacob and Esau. Chapter 25 brings more major transitions. First, Father Abraham, the great patriarch, wraps up his long adventure-filled life. Believe it or not, after Sarah's death, old Abraham remarries. He takes a new wife, Keturah, and has 6 more sons. And probably some daughters too, which, again, they never really mention daughters. So the man truly embodied be fruitful and multiply, even in his golden age. These sons become progenitors of other Middle Eastern peoples. However, Abraham makes it clear that Isaac is the principal heir. He gives gifts to the other sons and sends them off to the east, away from Isaac. At 175 years old, 175, Abraham breathes his last breath. An old man and full of years, and is gathered to his people. In a touching scene, his 2 eldest sons, Isaac and Ishmael, reunite to bury him in the very cave of Machpelah that Abraham bought. Despite past tensions, they come together to honor their father. Abraham's chapter closes as God had blessed him in every way. The next, text gives a brief account of Ishmael's descendants. 12 princes, fulfilling God's promise to make Ishmael a nation, as God has promised. Ishmael's line flourishes, and then we're done with him for now. Now the spotlight shifts to the next generation, Isaac and Rebecca. We learn that despite their lovely romance, they initially face infertility. Rebecca hasn't conceived, and Isaac is now 40, then 50.
Mama,
Yes?
so I'm watching a Creature Kids, and it's called Night Howler, and that Night Howler is making me itchy.
The show is making you itchy?
The Night Howler.
Okay. 50. So then 50, then finally at 60 years old. So Isaac prays hard to the Lord for his wife, and God answers. Rebecca becomes pregnant with twins. It's a rough pregnancy. The babies are jostling so much inside her that Rebecca is like, what is going on? She inquires of the Lord, and God gives her a prophetic word. 2 nations are in your womb. One will be stronger than the other, and the elder will serve the younger. So just, hint of a drama to come. So when the twins are born, they are dramatic from day one. The first baby comes out, red and hairy all over, like a little fur coat, and they name him Esau, which sounds like hairy. His twin brother emerges, gripping Esau's heel, literally holding on, as if trying to pull Esau back and say, "Me first." This hand grab earns him the name Jacob, meaning he takes by the heel, or figuratively supplanter or cheater. So right off the bat, these two are already tussling. Esau, the firstborn, is a rough and tumble outdoorsman in the making. Jacob, the secondborn, is a quieter type, more of a homebody, So fast forward, the boys grow up with very different personalities. And mom and dad plays favorites. Never a good idea. Isaac loves Esau more. Isaac enjoys the wild game, Esau hunts. While Rebecca loves Jacob more, perhaps preferring his gentle stay-at-home nature. You can smell trouble brewing like a pot of stew. And speaking of stew, here comes one of the most famous sibling showdowns in Genesis, the case of the soul birthright. One day, Esau comes in from the fields absolutely famished. Maybe he caught, nothing hunting, or he's just super hungry. Jacob happens to be cooking a pot of delicious red lentil stew. Very aromatic veggie soup, perhaps. I've never had lentil soup, so I can only imagine. Esau noses his way in and blurts out, "Let me eat some of that red stuff, for I am famished." He literally calls it that red stuff. Not even the name. Like, clearly, eloquence is not a priority when your stomach is growling. Hungry! Food! Give me! Anyways, that was some fun fact. Because of this, Esau gets the nickname Edom, which means red. Yes, he's literally nicknamed after a bowl of red stew. Jacob, ever the opportunist, sees his chance. Picture him, stirring the pot slowly, raising an eyebrow. "Did you want some of my stew, dear brother? Sure, I'll trade you for your birthright." Now, context. The birthright is the special honor and extra inheritance reserved for the firstborn son. It's a big deal. Family leadership, a double portion of inheritance, and in their case, carrying on Abraham's covenant promises. Jacob is basically asking Esau to trade his future inheritance and blessing for the momentary meal. Hang on, let me just take a quick hydration break. A sensible person would say, "No way, I'll go eat a goat or grass or something." But Esau is dramatic and hungry. Like, he famously replies, "I am about to die. Of what use is my birthright to me?" In other words, who cares about the future? I'm starving now. So, incredibly, Esau agrees. Ridiculously, he agrees to the deal. Jacob insists on an oath. No take backsies. And Esau swears to it. Deal done. Jacob gives Esau bread and lentil stew. Esau, wolfs it down, appeases his hunger, wipes his mouth, and strolls off, belly full. The scene ends with his weighty line. "Thus Esau despised his birthright." Translation: Esau treated his rights as firstborn with contempt, as if they were worthless, all for a bowl of soup. Talk about short-sighted decision. Esau's impulsiveness and Jacob's craftiness set the stage for major family conflict ahead. You can almost hear Rebecca's face palming in the background, like she likely heard about this trait and tucked it in her memory for later schemes. But getting ahead of myself. So, fun fact corner. Why lentil stew? In the region, red lentils have been a staple for millennia. It's cheap, filling, and tasty. Apparently, it's really good. I need to. I wonder, can you buy lentil beans at the store? If you can, I'm probably gonna try to make some. So I'm curious now. So I've never. I don't think I've ever had lentil. Anyway, so the Hebrew phrase Esau uses can be translated that red or red stuff, red whatever, which shows how eagerly he fixated on it. And indeed, Edom, Esau's other name, and the nation descending from him, means red, a permanent reminder of the day he traded his treasures for a transient meal. Also, some commentaries note this might have happened soon after Abraham's death, since the chapter starts with that. If so, the stew could have been the traditional mourner's meal. Lentils were served at funerals. That might add irony, even as the family mourned Abraham, a man of faith in the future. Esau was disregarding the future of, for immediate gratification. So Genesis 25 closes the chapter on Abraham's life and opens the story of Jacob and Esau, which will drive the narrative forward. We see that God's plan often upends human customs. The younger Jacob is chosen over the elder Esau, as hinted to Rebecca before their birth. This pattern of God's sovereign choice, sometimes called the older serving the younger, shows that divine purpose isn't bound by human norms. Meanwhile, Esau's stew saga is a timeless warning. Don't trade something priceless for instant gratification. He literally sold his future for a momentary pleasure. How often do we do that in smaller ways? The chapter encourages us to value our birthrights, the lasting things, over the red stew, temptation of life. Also, it highlights the power of appetite. Uncontrolled desires can cloud judgment big time. On the bright side, Jacob's cunning, while not exactly commendable, plays into God's plan. It reminds us that God can work through even flawed people and messy family dynamics to accomplish his promises. As we'll see, the struggle between these twins will shape the destiny of nations, like Israel, Jacob, and Edom, Esau. Providing that these birthrights and blessings are nothing to sniff at or trade for soup. So, as we wrap up episode 5, think about, the themes from Genesis 21 through 25 that connect with life today. Laughter after long sorrow. Sarah's joy can come to us in unexpected ways. And faith under trial. We all face Moriah's moment where we were called to trust and integrity and patience. Abraham, buying the cave honorably, waiting on God's timing. Then there's guidance in finding our path or partner, Isaac and Rebecca's divinely guided love story. And then lastly, valuing the eternal over the temporary, like, Esau's tale of caution. So I find myself inspired, to hold on a little tighter to the things that matter and maybe double check my life. trade deals to ensure I'm not giving up figuratively farm for a bowl of stew. Sometimes waiting, trusting, and saying no to an immediate craving can lead to far greater fulfillment later. Delayed gratification, not as tasty as stew, but way healthier for the soul. And on that note, we've reached the end of Genesis 21 through 25. Quite a journey. From a miraculous birth to a marriage at a well, from a near sacrifice to sibling shenanigans. These chapters have it all. So when we return in our next episode, we'll find out how the sibling rivalry became Jacob and Esau, really heats up. Like, trust me, stolen blessing is on the menu. Plus, Isaac will reprise a certain fib his dad pulled, like father, like son. And Jacob will embark on an adventure that involves ladder-like dreams and wrestles of faith. There's so much more drama to come. I promise you that. So thank you for listening to Chapters and Chuckles, and to our Bible stories with a twist. I hope you had a laugh, learned something, and maybe even found a bit of your own story in these ancient tales. So stay tuned for episode 6, where the saga continues with Genesis 26 through 30. And until then, keep the faith, keep your soup and birthright separate, and as always, stay curious and blessed. See you next time.